Guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Overcast Podcast. I'm Corey.
I'm Wes.
And today we are thrilled to be joined by Harry Portnof of Greenway Records. Harry, how are you doing?
Good, guys. I was going to say, and I'm Harry, is what I was going to say after you guys said that. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Awesome. That's great to hear. How has life been treating you recently? How have you been holding up?
It's been going. It's been busy. I find that the more busy I can keep myself, the more I'm happy to be and I love doing what I do. And it's like, so if I'm fueling the passion and that kind of thing, then life is good. So I'm super focused on the things that I have in front of me, like work wise and stuff like that, and projects that are in the pipeline and stuff. So like recently things have been quite good, actually. Really, the last couple of days, even in particular, were super exciting and some of the best stuff yet for the label and some of the bands I work with. Recently, actually just the last couple of nights, Frankie and the Witchfingers and Acid Dad had just come through town. So like, I'm still honestly recovering from the weekend in a way, like just like rebuilding my purpose to exist. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was really great. So on Saturday night, they both performed at a venue, the Bowery Ballroom, which is one of it's literally my favorite venue in Manhattan, in New York City. I've had bands perform at the Bowery like as opening acts, but I've never had a full bill be Greenway, like top down or whatever. And this was the first it was just Frankie and Acid Dad, like double, like a double banger like that, like two full sets from both of them. And and we sold it out, which was crazy, to be honest. Like, it's just nice. That was like icing on the cake and just incredibly, like, that's what I was just like, it bodes extremely well for where we are in like at this time, to me, like with the climate of music and live music, that room was actually double the size of any room either band had done in New York City as a headline prior to that. And like there was the risk involved with booking a show like that, because you just hope that, you can fill it out, or you feel really good about it. Over the last 2 years, things have gone really well for both bands in ways that were different from the last time they had been able to perform here in the city. So like I felt particularly good about the situation and trying to upgrade like that and really shoot for like another to accomplish something. And sometimes like that's where there's the most excitement comes to me, is like by doing something that is new. Like I'd much rather roll the dice and go into the unknown with that kind of thing than be like, oh, let's just do what we did before because that's easy or whatever, there's nothing really interesting about that. That doesn't push anything forward. So like, to me, and it just all like serendipitously worked out as well as it could. And both bands have been touring together into this. It's actually been really cool. They've been on like 20 plus nights together. And this was like night 10 of that tour. So they were like super hot. And it just was like freaking awesome. Like, it was just so much fun, so rewarding. Everybody's like was just in such like great spirits, like just like so much. It just felt like, because we've been working so hard together. And it's actually funny. It was like I had not seen Frankie or any of the dudes or Nikki in 2 years in person, but I work with them almost every day, like, which is kind of surreal. So it's like you run in, it's like, and I spent a lot of time with like Dylan and Josh and like over the years, and traveled a whole bunch and would be with them in all different places. And to not like, you realize not seeing somebody for that long, it's really interesting. It's really weird because like I'm lucky enough to become so close with them that like, it felt like I saw them yesterday in a weird way. It was super awesome. And it was a lot of fun. And then the Acid Dad guys are super close with. They're my like Brooklyn brothers essentially. And, just really happy and super rewarding to see both bands just excel in that space and during that performance. And then they actually played Philly last night and I cut down to that show because it's only an hour and a half away from here. And it's funny, like the Bowery show was kind of crazy. There's like a lot going on. There's like, actually in New York City, we work with a lot of different people who like do different aspects of like from a label perspective, I have my distribution here, like I'm distributed by the Orchard and Sony. So like a bunch of those people who I work with are based in New York, and like they've been working so hard on these campaigns with us too and trying to get records. Like it's a very important piece of the puzzle in terms of getting records out to the world when that happens for the label. So like it's just like everyone is enjoying almost like and like the fruits of the labor. So like and like with bands like that, the fruit of the labor is like the live show is what they do best. So like it's like to experience that and have it, it's like wow, like that everything is immediately like clear and worthwhile and satisfying and just like yeah, that's how I feel. So I feel pretty good actually recently. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I've actually been, because I follow all you guys on Instagram and stuff. So I've been seeing all the posts and stuff of those past few shows that happened a few nights ago, and looks incredible. Really gets me pumped for Levitation. So
are you guys going to be going?
Corey is.
I'll be going. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll be there too. We'd definitely have to have a beer in real life. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm super excited for that. When I found out the bill, because I'm a huge Kikagaku Moyo fan as well.
Yeah.
So I was like, Jesus Christ. And then Frankie and the Witch Fingers, Acid Dad, Hoover 3. I was like, my God, what a bill.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I'm really excited about that everything, this whole entire tour has moments on it. Levitation is a major one. It's like getting to all these milestones across it. It's like, it's kind of every single one is amazing in itself because like the uncertainty of these things, like when we booked this tour, like in May or so, when things started to like feel like, can we do a tour this summer or like in the fall? Like, is that going to be like realistic? Right. And you're like, well, we can certainly try. There were so many moments along the way. We were like, well, it could all just end. It could all be locked down again. It all could just kind of turn on its head. But so far, so good. Knock on wood. And like the bands they're playing together again tonight in Richmond, Virginia, and they're on their way to Texas. So I'm super excited about that as well. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. That show, Kingaku Moyo, obviously, Frankie, Hoover 3, asked that. It's going to be one for the books.
Definitely, yeah. We're, of course, going to talk further into Greenway Records and the different things that go into running a label. But first, we'd like to start off at the very beginning. Prior to Greenway Records, we know that you worked as a CPA. So we're just wondering, how did you go from working as a CPA to running a record label?
That's a good question. So I was studying accounting in school, and at the time when I was, between 18 and 22, when normal people, like a normal time in the United States to go to college or like whatever, I had like no idea what I wanted to do with my life. My father is an accountant, and he always kind of just like, do that. It's a smart thing to do. It's a safe thing to do. And I kind of was always like, I agree. Like, I don't want to, if I'm going to be here, I'd like to get something out of my time or whatever. So I just kind of, buckled down, I did what I had to do. And I learned a lot for sure. That comes in handy these days in terms of like the ability to run my own business, and understand like the actual, like what it takes to like what it costs to make something and how many you need to make it and how many you need to sell to break even. Those are like important factors, like in terms of like when you are running a business or selling anything or manufacturing things. So, I mean, the crossover between all of it is I actually was playing. I've always loved music as well. Before that, I discovered vinyl record. I discovered my dad's vinyl record collection in my grandmother's attic when I was like late in high school. And there's a turntable that at the time I didn't even realize didn't work correctly. It worked, but like one of the channels was messed up. So for like a year, I would like be getting records and I'd be like, oh, why like records sound so weird? They just sound worse than like they just don't sound like the whole thing. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I guess that's like, but it didn't like turn me off. I was just like more intrigued by it. I just didn't get it at all. Like, it was just such a mystery to me that I was like more infatuated by it than anything. And I was like more like into solving how to make it like figure it out, basically figure everything out that I could. So like there's a lot of crossover between all these things. To answer your question, it's like I was playing in bands. I really enjoy playing guitar and making music myself, but I never really considered myself like a songwriter per se. I just really like to play. I was playing in bands. I was playing shows locally in my hometown where I grew up in Long Beach, Long Island. We like a band I was in was with a couple of buddies of mine. It was called the Midnight Snacks. It's like nothing more than a glorified cover band, essentially. We just played like buzzed out like surf rock covers. We literally would just like fuzz the shit out of like Dick Dale, the Ventures, the Chatels. Nice. We had the ear to like change keys with everything and like flow it all together. Since I was developed like an ear for music itself, and just loved to like just make like good noise essentially with these things. And like and then I was just like kind of like going through it. We actually, in my own mind, we're doing like, we would play our local bars and like all our friends would show up and like you could like the bar would be packed out. I like got to the point where I was like, I felt like I had accomplished that like goal of like, and then I immediately got like sort of bored. Like I was like, I just like I said like before, it's like I kind of always like doing new things. And it's like, once you do something, it's like, what's the next thing you're going to do? It's like, it's not like, it's like, you got to keep it sort of engaging and fresh all the time. And that quickly became like, I just didn't want to keep doing that over and over, which wasn't as fun. It was like the nights were fun, but like, it wasn't like, I wasn't getting satisfaction out of like, just kind of running through the same thing over and over in ways that I had prior, like over like, at that time in my life. I was working in accounting. I started to work at a job in Manhattan, and it was a financial job. It wasn't fulfilling in a sense. I've always considered myself a creative person. So like, it wasn't fulfilling in a creative sense, at all really. But my love for music and my love for vinyl that kept getting more intense at the time, I became just like particularly obsessed with records. Like, I started to like become a hunter. Like the job was decent. I had no real, like, I was pretty young. I had like no real responsibility other than like, so I was like on Discogs all day, like hunting for freaking like weird 7-inches that I heard of or something. And like B-sides. And like, how can I find this? And I just like spend all my time, even when I was supposed to be working, I somehow worked and would be doing other things. I don't know if you guys can hear, it's just very New York City, but there's like some police sirens outside or whatever. They're loud. I would just like be hunting for all these things, kind of like more engaged with that. I just kind of like, that's just all I really cared about. Was just the music that I loved, and sort of this, like, I definitely have like a hoarding collector mentality. I'm like a very organized hoarder, essentially, is what I've like come to realize. Like, and I value the things that I love. Like, and I believe that like that you are like, if you're lucky enough to find these things, you're kind of like responsible for keeping them like keeping them existing in a way for the future, like whether it be cool old guitar or a really weird old record that still is like in great shape. It's like, enjoy it and then like caretake it, like for the future of some sort. And like, so it kind of like all these things are just fusing together. At the same time, I always loved live music. And I was just in New York City, and Brooklyn was always like just a hub of like shows. And like, you could just see anyone here, essentially. Yeah. Anyone was going on tour, they usually come to New York City. It's just like a part of, like, I always said this, like, if you're doing the shit seriously, you're going to come here at some point. And like, I feel like early on in the days of the label, I was very important because like, I had heard of all these great bands, and then like I always made it a point, like when like I saw they were coming here, I had to go see them or whatever. So like, to get back to your point, things started to fuse together, and I was working in accounting as a CPA, and I was like, I really wanted to figure out how to make my own record. My band wasn't really writing a lot of music, and I was playing shows with a couple bands that did write a lot of music. So like the first band I ever released was were friends of mine from Long Beach, Long Island, called the Young Rochelle's, pop punk group. Super like just fun dudes, like not even like my, like just, I was more intrigued with the adventure of creating a record and not having any idea of how to do that. Like that was, and they were, and I had a concept in early on. I wanted to do something unique. I wanted to do something where it was like stimulating from a physical product standpoint that was special and like, you know, even collectible in a sense. Or like, how did my whole thing in that early on was like, how do I get somebody to care about a band they've never heard of before? Okay. Like, how do I get you to buy something from me, from a band you've never heard of? And it's make something that's so stimulating, so beautiful that it's like, even if the music, it's like, you know, that record itself is just worth owning. Like, and then when you got it, and I always trust like my ear actually more than anything else. I knew the music was good. I knew that I liked it. I wouldn't be the only one. So like the icing on the cake was now you had this beautiful, incredible looking like unique product, and the music was good. It was now one of your favorite records that you had in your collection. Like that was what I thought what people would get. And like, and things started to really grow really quickly. The first couple of records I made while I was working in this accounting office, like they didn't even, I was just like Googling, how do you like, what's the process of this? I would call pressing plants that I got their phone numbers. Sometimes you get lucky. Like sometimes you'd ask them a question, you'd be like, I have no fucking time for this. They literally hang up on you or whatever. Sometimes you get a guy who's like on his lunch break and he just sit there for an hour, just talk to me like about like literally the ins and out. And I started to like early on start to figure out what it meant to actually create a physical product, use the vinyl medium, do it in a way that actually does respect to the medium and sounds good, you know? And it's like, and do all that. It's all started to happen simultaneously. There came a point where I was like, this actually seems to be doing something. I have like X amount of like time in my life I could go for it before I would have to go back. And I was like, that's it. I'm just going to try. I'm just going to try to do this. And I kind of just left that and I went full time into it. And I've never looked back since. Things have just only gotten more and more interesting. They've only gotten better releases and products, and the projects have only gotten bigger and bigger. And it's pretty like I'm just riding that sort of wave with these amazing bands that I've been lucky enough to find and convinced of my vision, and also completely ride off their vision and mesh those two things together.
Very nice. That's a very inspiring story. I like it's a really good story that how you kind of you started with little to no information on how to even like how a record was made, and then you go into running an entire record label. It's really impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, it's funny because when I say it and I like think about it back, it's like literally the first records I owned, I didn't even know how to play them correctly. Like I thought, and I now I still have some of them, and they all work perfectly fine. It was just like I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know like the record player wasn't set up correctly. It was that way for like a year before I figured out how to do it better or whatever. But yeah, it was like I was more intrigued about figuring things out. There's always a solution to anything that you're confused or there's a problem or whatever. You just got to not give up, essentially. Yeah. You'll find yourself on the other side at some point.
Yeah. You touched on a little while ago how you wanted to make something that somebody would want to buy, like in terms of the records. And you've definitely, that's something that holds true with me in terms of Greenway Records. Like you said, it's eye-catching at first. Like you see the color of the record and you're just like, ooh, that looks nice. And then if it's a band that you've never heard of, like for like example, Max Payne and the Groovies, like I had never heard of them, or the Muckers, I had never heard of them until I saw you post about them on Greenway. And then now I go and I listen to them all the time now, and I've bought their records.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And it's great. And it's really cool that, because Greenway is a record that happens to me all the time. Like you announce a band like Cairo's Creature Club recently. I'm obsessed with them now. And
it's amazing.
In Austin, I'm going to go and try to see if I could find one of their records in a record store.
Hell yeah, dude. That's so cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of off of that, the bands you have on Greenway are just phenomenal. And I'm just curious on how you go about scouting for bands. Do you scout for bands, live bands, or do you just kind of reach out to them?
I appreciate that. First of all, thank you. Yeah, which means a lot. You know, it's morphing. It's like a morphing thing. It's changed over the years. The first release were just friends of mine who like we were just literally hanging. They were playing shows. They were opening shows for the Midnight Sax at the bar we were playing at, and they were just playing full on original pop punk music. And I was like, "He's like, can I just try to make this record?" And they're like, "Yeah, hell yeah, let's like go for it." That's like the first. Now it's like early on, bands were like the first. I got submissions. And I was like, I'd never been submitted to before. The second band that submitted to me was sick. I signed them. It was like the second one or whatever. Okay. Like it was, then I started to my goal was to just break into Brooklyn and New York City and become like a meaningful, like addition to the artistic scene that I loved so much. So I wanted to contribute here and also like just do the best I could and be better than things I thought could be better in ways. Right. Yeah. So like I started to go to lots of shows at the time. We had a lot of amazing like DIY spaces, like Death by Audio was still a thing I was going to all the time. 285 Kent, Glasslands, all these things existed in the part of Brooklyn, like Williamsburg, that don't exist anymore. But at the time, it was like a really interesting and unique period where you could just like go, like I would go to Death by Audio and I'd just be like, oh, who's this band? Jeff the Brotherhood, or who's the Meat Bodies or whatever. Like, and there's just 2011 or 12 or whatever. And it's just like, holy, and like you were there with 5 people. Okay. Like, and it's just like, and then I just wasn't scared to go up to people and be like, just kind of like tell them how much their music like inspired me and what I would like. And I wasn't afraid to ask if they were interested in working together. It took a number of times of doing that until I found the next band that was interested in doing it. The first one in New York City was a band called Scully. They were, it was female fronted, 4 amazing women who just like wrote beautiful surf rock music. And they were opening for Jeff the Brotherhood at one show. And I was like, you guys are fucking amazing. I'm like, I would love to make a record. They're like, and somehow they had known like something I maybe had made. And then I was like, I just want to make one for you. And they're like, let's do it. That was it. It was like, boom. Then I made my first like record for a true Brooklyn band. And there started to roll, you just kind of have to like, don't be afraid to like, go after things when you feel like it's worth it. Another time was I had saw the band LA Witch, happened to just stumble upon them. They were opening for The Kills at Music Hall Williamsburg. They had only released a self-released 7-inch at the point. I didn't even know about that or whatever. They had no real music out. And I was outside the show. I saw the bass player, Irita, and I was like, you guys are freaking amazing. And I'm like, I just started this label. I would love to like do something for you guys. Like, is that at all like something you considered? Like, they were actually like, she was like, well, we are going to Europe in 2 months. We really would love to have something brand new for it. And I was like, done, I'll do. I had no idea if I could make a record in 2 months. Actually, it was a really difficult thing to do. Now it's actually impossible right now. The vinyl industry today is insane. But at the time, it was like 3 months was like the average turnaround time. Okay. I somehow, freaking begged, pleaded, blah, blah, blah. We had a record in a week prior to them leaving. Arrive basically. Yeah. And I sent them 100 or so of them and they took them, and that record definitely helped establish something with the label, because that band was like that was the first band or one of the first ones that like accelerated quickly after that in a way. Like I couldn't, Greenway was so young. I was like their first their first label release, 7-inch release. But I was so young as a label. I could not support a band like that from like a full release perspective yet. I just didn't know how. And they had they signed to Suicide Squeeze, which is a label I love so much and respect and inspires me all the time. But like the fact that like I had to caught them right before that, like it was the first time I sold like instead of like 50 or like 100 7-inches, I sold 500. Like it was like a graduation into like another like step upwards of this like proverbial staircase or something that you have to keep stepping on. And it was like, then it's like when I started to change, because I made it a point, you know, I was trying to find, and I was going out there. I was going at that time. I was scouting a lot of shows. I would take any opportunity. I would be able to go, like Ellie was just playing. I would go to that show. I would meet the people they were hanging out with. I'd be like, oh, you're from X, Y, and Z. That's super cool. Like, let's get coffee or something. You know, I'd love to talk about music and whatever. And like, it just started to grow really quickly like that. And then I just started to I started to build and establish something that was going on. And I would approach bands that I would like love so much. And originally, like, with no idea. And now everyone was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make a record or whatever. It's kind of crazy. Like the next, like, I mean, the biggest one to me is like that has been such a fruitful relationship on both ends is the band Frankie and the Witchfingers. I had made a record for actually another band, Stonefield, an amazing band from Australia, which literally that came from, I was like, you guys are amazing. Like, you guys are insane. Like, I like sent them like an Instagram DM, or like I wrote on one of their photos, like, you guys are great. Like, and then they followed Greenway, liked one of these like random, really cool, colorful 7-inch I had made, and like wrote sick. And like I responded to it. I'm like, let me make one for you guys, like smiley face, haha. And literally I get a DM and it's like, yeah, let's do it or whatever, right? Yeah. And then and then the next thing I know, I make 3 7-inch releases for Stonefield. They were like their first US releases of things, them being on Flightlist at the time. Our release show was them opening for King Gizzard at like when Gizzard was ascending here. Okay. Like at Webster Hall. And it was just like, things were just like kind of happening at the right time, at the like right place at the right time in a way for some things. So like the same thing happened with Frankie and the Witchfingers. It was honestly very like, I don't know if Dylan remembers kind of the way it went, but like, it was the same exact thing. They liked and commented on one of my photos. And I literally just wrote back, like, I'd love to make one of these for you guys or whatever. The next thing I know, we're like freaking talking like in DM. And he's like, I'm just like, I'd love to make a single for you. Anything you guys have, I think you're fucking phenomenal. Right. At the time they had already put out Brain Telephone and Sidewalk and Heavy Roller, records that were actually impossible to find on vinyl. But like, he was like, I would listen to him like, damn, this band is fucking insane. Like, they don't write a bad song. Like, and Dylan was like, he's like, yeah, that's awesome. We'd love to do something. It's like, but we actually have a full album written already. It's like, it's a double album. And I was like, done, let's do it. I didn't even hear a single song. Okay. And that album was Zam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. That's how that happens. Seriously. It's like, I didn't even, I agreed to do the entire thing. I had not even listened to a song on the album, but that's how good I knew they were. That's how amazing. I literally couldn't tell you a bad Frankie and the Witchfinger song that existed. So I'm like, they're just writing all good songs. What's going to be bad about this? Yeah. And that worked out. That definitely worked out.
It's funny because it's all very full circle, because I found out, I already knew about Frankie and the Witchfingers, and I was really getting on them when I was becoming obsessed with buying vinyl also. And all of it was sold out, like you said. So the first available release was Zam. And then I was like, ooh, what's this record label, Greenway Records, that released it? And then so I went into you guys. And then we talked to Spaghetti Jesus. He was like episode 4. He was one of the first episodes. And that's literally how it happened. Frankie and the Witchfingers, the Instagram, liked that post that I did. And then I DM'd them. I'm like, I'd love to do one with you. And then they agreed, and then that's how we talked to Dylan. So it's all very serendipitous.
It's crazy. I mean, that's time in the day and age we live in, I know. And there's certain aspects of it that can be like daunting in terms of like social media and like what it is as a whole. But like the truth of the matter is, it interconnects people in ways that can be really, really amazing. Obviously, you know, and it's like, and that is that's just like, that's embrace. You got to embrace what's there. It's what's available. And it definitely has introduced some insanely cool opportunities for people to connect, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah. I always get a lot of questions from people, like listeners, that are like, how do you go about contacting this band? Like, how do you get in touch with them? I'm like, well, a lot of them, you just message them on Instagram and they'll message you back. Like, they're really cool people. Or sometimes I know some bands have their like contact email address in their Instagram bio. So I'm like, just email them, shoot them an email. I mean, the worst that could happen is they don't respond. But
Exactly.
we've been
That's,
fortunate enough to like get a lot of responses, and a lot of them are open to it, and it's just been great.
I think that goes back to like what I was saying is like just like I used to do that by just approaching people, because like the worst thing that could happen is it was already a no before I approached them. The best thing that could happen is it became a yes by just like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there was no, I would be in the exact same spot I was before I asked. At least I kind of like, did what I felt you had to do. And the same thing with reaching out to these people. You send an email, you already are beginning with like, it's not happening. The best case scenario is that you set something up because you go out there, you put yourself out there, you reach out. Like that,
Exactly.
that's just how, the best way to kind of do anything is just like, don't be afraid to take a risk.
Yeah. And once people start saying yes, it's just like, oh, well, maybe now I can contact this person. Like it's self-building, and it really inspires you to go and be like, yeah, I can probably get in contact with this person. All right. We're back for part 2, if you will. Last we left off, we were talking about how similar our sort of connection stories were, in a way. But something that I think, it seems like you're really passionate about talking about it, and that's great because I love colored pressings of vinyl. Like they're a treat to look at, a treat to listen to, and just everything. Like I don't even have to play it sometimes. Sometimes I'll just take records out and just look at them for a while and then just put them back.
Most fun.
Yeah. And it's really cool that you seem really passionate about that kind of thing, because it's part of the art. And I just
think so.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how do you go about choosing all these crazy color combos and colorways for records?
I mean, I think like it's a part of the art, really. And like the more you can, like, to me, like conceptualize and tie everything together to be like so all the pieces of the puzzle play their part, like the more impactful that release will be for people who are lucky enough to discover it. Right. So like when we approached color vinyl and all that kind of stuff, it's like, how can it complement what we have already? How does it complement the artwork that we have? How does it complement the music that is there? What is it? What's appropriate, and what's like what you do? Sometimes it's just like go crazy and try fun, exciting new things. Early on, I was working a lot with a pressing plant that was local to New York called Stereo Disc. It's actually in North New Jersey. And they had just started their own super like small 2 presses. Greenway was very new, and they reached out to me on Instagram, actually, again, like, and they're like, we see you, like, you're up here in New York, like we're right in New Jersey, you should come swing by and like check it out. We'd love to, like, we press records. And I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know someone was like driving distance from me that did this or whatever. So like hopped in my car and like cruised down like 1 hour to New Jersey, and where I discovered Leo and his whole like setup and everything. And really early, like I actually was able to, he let me literally press my own records. Like that's how hands-on. And he would just be like, yeah, he would like show me, he's like, yeah, it's like this. He's like, all right, I got to go like do this thing. He's like, you just want to like do the press or whatever. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, okay. Like, and I was like, and like, I was just like pouring shit into the fucking thing or whatever. And like, that's how I just like kind of discovered like how you can like manipulate the colors. And like, it actually helped me understand the colored pressing and how like the compounds themselves actually interact and what they do with each other. Cause it's really easy to not understand actually how they interact as physical compounds. Like when you talk about the actual wax itself, a lot of people like it's just like, they think it's completely like, they don't know that it's done one at a time, and that it's a very like labor intensive physical process. Some people really think it's like attuned to painting or something, and it's like completely a different, like every way that you make a record is like a unique process, whether it be splattering something or swirling something, or like all those things need to be done in a unique way. And it's really like bespoke, but also like a lot of these, it's interesting, it's like a lot of these plants who develop techniques and color like formats and like kind of deal, it's like a secret, like they hold like close to the chest, you know what I mean? Like, because it's like, it gives like, it's like they figure out some unique way to do it, and like only they know how to do it until someone else figures it out. It's not like you can like, there's certain pressing techniques that are more obvious, like splattering and stuff like that. But like when you get into like, we actually early on we were having so much fun at this Planet Certus, like we would just try to invent new things. So like there were some early pressings I did where like we were like just kind of messing around. We got like these crazy amoeba like color bursts, so called like the flesh eating amoeba burst. We actually it necessitated a machine that broke after doing it only 3 times, so it could never be done again. So like
Jesus.
Yeah, so like there's a couple of releases early on, like on Greenway. This band Dead Coast from London are great. Bob Forrest, who's amazing singer-songwriter from Los Angeles. Rachel Hayden, amazing singer-songwriter from Los Angeles. One of those versions in each one of those records has like a flesh-eating amoeba burst that was done with a machine that just after it broke it died with that. Like you just couldn't do it anymore, basically. And it was like, I work with plants that do a lot of crazy things now, like because the pressings got bigger, they got more labor intensive. Like instead of doing 50 of something, I was like, how do I make 1,000 of something or whatever? So you kind of had to like diversify, who you were manufacturing with, because it just is like just a necessity really. But they don't. It's like you can't just do that. I can't be like, can you make this? It's super unique, and that in itself is so fun. So like to me, it's just like that's another thing. It's just like it was always fresh and fun, and every piece that came out was unique. And like so when I was hand pouring 7 inches, just like the excitement of getting one that just was crazy looking, and then doing it like another one's crazy. Like that was just so fun. And like I think like that really spoke to a lot of people. Just felt like it's just true to the format really, because vinyl itself is fun. It's like I think it's crazy because as like I would say like younger people, we like it's pretty amazing that the format's experiencing what it is at this point with people who are younger, because like we grew up with computers and like iPods and all this stuff, and it's like so easy. Like it's so like a tune ingrained in us how normal that is, that you understand it, but like when you look at a record, there's something mysterious about it. It almost doesn't make sense. It's almost more technologically advanced to me that there's music inside of a record than there is inside of my computer. Which is kind of crazy, but like that's just, I think that's like something about that like mystery that really keeps people intrigued. And then when you like amp it up and you make these like freaking, and it's just like candy in a candy store in terms of like colors and all that kind of stuff. It's just fun. Having fun.
Yeah, I definitely love when you guys would release the hand poured 7 inches. I have one of the Pleasure Frankie and the Witch Fingers hand pours.
That's awesome.
Incredible.
I hand poured all those, which is like I went to this plant and I would stand there for hours, like, and just pouring colors into the machine. And like you start to realize like a little bit of this, a little bit of that makes this, like, because it's like you had to like it's just like there is no formula. It's like very feel basically. So like, which is kind of cool because like you're kind of playing that machine in a way, which is like it's in itself an instrument. If you consider it that way, it's kind of interesting, and it's like it's satisfying.
Yeah. One thing I really love about your work is that limited releases are really cool. Like I'm a big fan of limited color pressings and stuff like that. And Greenway, of course, is known for doing those, but you guys do a lot of them, like a lot of different ones. And I think that's really cool because when bands do limited releases, like, and then they're gone. When they're gone, they're gone. And I like the idea of like, when that pressing's gone, it's gone. But you guys have a lot of pressings, like for example, the Frankie and the Witch Fingers represses that you guys are working on, or we're working on. Well, still are. We're missing one.
Still working on them for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I just it's great that you do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think there's a lot, and like I touched on before, it's like how you get somebody to be interested in something. Not necessarily they don't, it starts to grow, and initially they don't know, and you get them interested in something they're not familiar with. Then then you have them, they become familiar. How do you enforce that passion? How do you continue to grow the love, for something, and give people something that inspires them? Because it's just like, I think there's a fine line between scarcity, collectability, and like also trying to have as many people be able to experience that feeling as possible, really. So like you kind of play, it's a game. It really is a game. And like, cause like, sometimes you just like, it's hard to know what that number or where that line sits, really. So like you do your best to, get, because to me it's like the best thing I can do is get as many people to discover something as possible. As a label, my job is to try to get something that's heard by as many people as possible, and to get people as many people interested in something as possible as I can, to get the bands and their art as far reaching as I can help get it, in my own way. So it's like sometimes creating demand and creating scarcity helps get people even more engaged with something, because then they're like, well, I might have missed this one, but I'm not going to miss the next one. Okay. Like that's sort of what I always kind of take from it. And like, and then I'd be like, all right, well then let's make a little bit more next time, because I feel like unfortunately people had missed out on the last one because it was we just didn't anticipate how many people were interested, or we just like we lowballed it or something. So it's a fine line between those two things, but it's a lot of fun. You want to, I like the idea of, to me, and especially when it comes to things like those Frankie issues are a good example. We are doing them to, one, honor the records in ways they deserve to be like honored and done properly and given the special touch they deserve, but then also keep them available to people. Because like we said before, when we first discovered these bands, me too included, it was impossible to get your hands on some of those things. That was the past. Now this band, everybody should hear Sidewalk on vinyl. You know what I mean? Like, it's so like, if you get your, like there are ones that you have to run to the local your record shop and try to find it. And if you're inspired, you got there and you got one, freaking awesome, because it's definitely worth it. But if you didn't, you can find one on clear vinyl or something, later on. It's going to be there because those records deserve to be heard. And the band like that is only just getting started. So like, you know what I mean? Like my job is to foster the growth and allow people to discover it. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't live in Austin, but I have a few friends up there that were able to go to record stores, and I got the Brain Matter Splatter, Brain Telephone. It's incredible pressing.
Thank you.
I also saw that recently you unearthed a lost box of first pressings of Zam. Which is pretty amazing. Yeah. If you have any extras, feel free to bring them to Austin.
We found there were some boxes of Zam that were in storage. It's funny, in my parents' attic, essentially, is where they were. Okay. And I had not realized that there were 4 Zam tour, and they were actually left over from right before the pandemic hit. They were the band stock that I was waiting for them to come get from me in New York City, essentially. And it was just sitting there. And then literally I didn't think about them for 2 years, basically. And I was just, and Frankie was coming through town, and I was getting a lot of stuff ready because they needed the tour's going really well. They're selling a lot of records on the road, which is awesome. And I was going to restock and find what I had on hand, because I just wanted to give them as much as I could when they got here. And I was like, holy shit. I'm I forgot that we had all these. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that, because with the state of pressing right now and a record like Zam, which is amazing, it just takes a long time to do. So it's and when we do it, we will bring Zam back. I will say we will absolutely bring Zam back in a way that honors that record, like we are doing as a reissue, and with the mentality of these other reissues in mind, kind of deal, and do make it unique again, so that the initial version of that record respect the sanctity of how special it is, basically. That's just something else I was collectability and all that, and change, once something you put it out there and then you code the next thing. To me, I really believe you should respect the sanctity of something you do and not bastardize it by if something goes really well, oh shit, I might as well just fucking make 1,000 more of those, and just that's trick people or something, or I think that's the I've seen labels do that as a fan of vinyl and stuff like that over the 15 years I've been collecting records or whatever. And like that just never, I never was like, I didn't respect that mentality. I kind of, you have to respect the sanctity of the product you create in a way. And like, and just be creative and make new things, basically. But yeah, Zem, they definitely have a couple boxes, I will say. And I think that hopefully that, those will last for this tour. I'm hoping for the next 10 shows or so until Austin. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Austin, Levitation's next weekend, pretty big deal. How do you plan something out like that? Like, what goes behind that?
I'm very excited. Like, it's a good segue. So my relationship with Levitation, I run their record label. I'm partners in their record label. My partner Rob Fitzpatrick is one of the founders of Levitation, and definitely the figurehead of Levitation. Rob's like the brains behind the beast, I would say. Okay, I was really lucky to meet Rob about 2 years ago, and through a mutual friend and someone we had both worked with. And at the time, Levitation had their label RAS, Reverberation Appreciation Society. And Rob was like me with Greenway. Like I kind of like one-man band doing a lot of jobs in a way or whatever, right? And the festival itself seemed to become so time like intensive for him, because it's a huge undertaking every year, that like running a label wasn't what he could do at the same time in the capacity that you could do a label. Basically, he just like what I know is that he was really wanted to bring that back and give it its true like ability and legs, basically. So when he had met someone like our mutual friend was like, I know somebody who knows how, like he's a label guy. He runs labels. He's started his own thing and done some really cool shit with it, I guess, or whatever. And we hit it off, and we started working really closely together. After it's already been 2 years since we began that relationship, we definitely like pumped life back into RAS. That it was Levitation is like like Greenway aspired to become something in like rock music, psych music, that like I looked up to people like Levitation, and like I didn't know, like wow, like all this. And the fact that I get to work hand in hand with Rob is an honor, really. Like, and that he trusts me with his, what he conceptualized and invented, essentially, is a huge, it's an honor, really. And like, I take it as such. It allowed me the ability to work with some of my idols, really, like really quickly, honestly, which is like super special. So to answer your question, I don't really handle booking a festival per se, but I run the label. But that being said, we work so closely. I get a very good picture and a behind the curtain view of what it takes to do that. And it is insane. Like he is working 24 hours a day, like, especially right now, as it gets closer and closer to like it happening, it's the only thing you can, it's a very much obviously full time. It's more than full time, like to get something like that and take care of it. He's amazing at what he does. I love that I get to make records, and that I think, and the connection between Levitation and Greenway and all this, it's just made everybody better. Like it was like a step up when we connected for everything.
Yeah.
Levitation, RAS, Greenway, the bands that intertwine all of them, everybody grew. I felt like, in a way, it's even saying like Levitation, RAS, the label grew. We started to make, there was a time where they made records, and it started with band like the Black Angels, who also are like founders of Levitation. And then it took a pause because the festival itself was just so busy, and like that was the focus. They just wanted to do shows and stuff. Now we're making more records than they ever made before, ever in the history of the label. So like I'm super proud of that, and I'm really lucky that I get to be a piece of that puzzle. Like an important, I like to think an important piece in helping get things done, like bringing the Greenway values when it comes to physical production and conceptual nature of releases and the sanctity of releases and respecting them and making things special and unique and connecting all those dots. that's definitely, all came from what I was doing, with Greenway, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we started talking to you, me and Wesley were actually talking about how just crazy the idea is of like all the work that goes into running a record label. And we're like, well, technically he's running two, like you're running Greenway and
Yes.
RAS. So
Yeah.
it's just like, God, like to us, it would seem like you're working like 24/7 nonstop.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a lot. Yeah. I'm happy. It's allowed me to pursue my dream and make it more like something that is like sustains my life. I have a wife, I have a dog, we have life hopes and stuff, and like music can sustain that as one aspect of our life. That's an amazing thing. And like hooking Greenway made me I learned how to make records, and I learned how to do them well, right? And to a point where it's like someone like Levitation took notice of that, was like, we want that guy to make our records or whatever. And then it's like, now it's like that gave me the ability to make music my livelihood, really, like in a way that it's like doesn't seem to be slowing down, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah. One thing that I've really been digging my teeth into as of late have been the levitation sessions. Sorry, I just had a stroke. Levitation sessions that have been coming out of RAS, and incredible work, just all around. Everything, the streamings, the pressings, the bundles with shirts and everything, the posters.
I appreciate
just
that,
incredible work.
That definitely was that's a true RAS RAS Levitation. It's the same thing, but like they actually are different from each other in ways, like because the festival and the label actually separate from a business standpoint, but like it's like that's throwing shows, that's making records, that's everything in one. So that's like the full package, really. And yeah, I'm really proud of what me and Rob were able to like conceptualize and pull off. He brought in freaking amazing people who he knew and was connected through the love of the festival. And we approached them with the idea that we wanted to produce films, really. We wanted to make them like, we would go to bands, be like, we want this to be your Live in Pompeii. You know what I mean? Like Pink Floyd or whatever, like do what would like stand the test of time. Like it grew. It started to grow like early on. The first couple were like, we were bands that we knew, like it was like in their studios, super psyched out, super tripped out. We're like, well, what if we like gave you a little more money and you shot this like outside somewhere in the desert or whatever, right? And like then we hook up with the OCs, and Dwyer does exactly that, like times 100, like the best possible way you could do it. He shoots it literally, the first one in the desert outside of Joshua Tree and Pappy Harriet's or whatever. The second one, like it just, that opened the door, and we're like, we just want these unique experiences. Like how do you make someone like a record for a band they never heard of? How do you give somebody an experience that is unique in itself? One, during the pandemic when it began, when we didn't have any shows. So just like something where you can value and get the significant enjoyment out of it. And now it's transitioning again. It's like, how do we give, when the time of shows are starting to come back, how do you make it like something that's totally unique and still as interesting? The merchandising aspect of it was definitely a unique idea, like early on during that time period that we kind of jumped on. Just had like, well, it's funny because Mitchell was like, oh, I can make cassettes out of this audio super easily or whatever. The first couple were cassette, like there were cassette components, but we didn't jump. I was like, vinyl's complicated. I don't know. Like, I'm like, all right. And then like it came early 2021, which is what we're in right now. Right. No. And we were with like Acid Mother's Temple and Dead Meadow. And we're like, all right, let's just try to make a record out of this. I'm like, why not? Just like, it's amazing. Like it's going to be the obstacle is how long it takes to make records right now. So like the biggest obstacle we have, because we put these things on pre-order when the sessions are going live. And unfortunately, that's the exact moment I'm getting the audio from the bands. Like people think it's like, oh, we've been working on it. You've had this for like, you might've, no, like a lot of it's happening in such real time. We're getting the delivery of the final mixes, a week, 2 weeks before it premieres or something. Right. And that's when I can start the process of creating that record. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be worthwhile. I want these things on my turntable. I just have to have the trust in the customer that we're going to deliver that product to them, even if they have to wait 6 months or longer, you know, and that is difficult. We found like that to be the most, like just the one like risk or like this, it's like, like that could feel, I don't want to say disappointing because it's all like when it comes, it's amazing and they are worthwhile, but like people have to wait, you know, it's like we can't make things out of thin air and the process still exists. And I still want the records to be the best record you can have on your turntable. So I'm not going to cut corners. Basically, when it comes to making them, I want to make sure they're mastered for vinyl. I want to make sure the test pressings sound perfect. I want to make sure, because that shit is going to live with you for its entire existence. It'll, you know, why not do it right? Even if you have to wait a little bit. It just, even with the process of doing it right, doesn't really change it from doing it wrong. So I might as well just do it right.
Yeah.
It's still going to take that much time.
Definitely. Yeah. We have the time limit thing again.
Okay.
I don't know why. That was super fast. Time flies.
It's like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So we have 10 minutes left. But one thing that we really wanted to touch on, that we wish we could have spent a little more time on, was the recent flooding that happened last month. We know that Greenway was hit pretty hard by that. And just, it's really inspiring seeing how still positive you are. And just, it's incredible to see.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, it was devastating. I'm not going to lie. I can't sugarcoat it. It really was a shitty situation. We had built this incredibly creative and artistic space that also functioned as Greenway's first true office and like headquarters, really. Like I built a label and started in my bedroom, started in coffee shops, started wherever I could with my laptop, doing anywhere. I finally established a headquarters and office, and we were there for about 2 years. And I'll say, like, what I'm proud of is that the records we made down there we're going to live a lot longer than that space would ever have existed. And we created some amazing things down there in that room. Like so many of these sessions and so many of these records were born out of that headquarters. And like Acid Dad's live session was recorded down there in the live room. Their Levitation session. The Muckers music video for Suspended was recorded in that room the next day, actually, with the same blue screens up. They just kept them blue instead of tripping them out like Acid Dad did. And those things to me are like, at least like honor, like having the Acid Dad session vinyl record is like forever honors that place in a way that like I'm super proud of. Yeah, we lost a ton of equipment. We lost a ton of gear. I lost a lot of inventory, but the community was crazy supportive. Like nobody thought, like in the time, it was a very isolating feeling when something really bad is happening. You know, I'm not far from a unique experience in that sense. A lot of people got really shitty situations during that time. Like it's terrible. We were not thinking about it. It's like I was getting inundated with like messages and Greenway DMs like, we want to help, anything, put this up, like not thinking about doing GoFundMe's and stuff like that at the time. Or like, I'm telling the guys, I'm like, look, if you want to help, we should just put it up there. No one thought that we would get like $23,000 in like 2 days or whatever. That was crazy. I mean, the community was so supportive that it was so inspiring that we're like, you felt directly that it meant something to, because it's gonna be very also like, I can exist very much my own thing where like I'm getting like I enjoyed it and I feel like I'm not going to be the only person who likes this record I'm working on. I'm really proud of it or whatever, but like I'm living in that existence myself or whatever. But to see that was like, wow, there's so many people who feel that feel inspired by this, have been touched by this, appreciate these bands, appreciate these releases or whatever. It was really meant everything. I mean, for me, there is no other option. There's no stopping this. Like, it's like, we're going to rebuild a new office. We're already searching for new places. The support we got is going to allow that to happen sooner than later, honestly, which is amazing. So like, we are, you know, I'm just forever grateful for such a supportive community of people. And and sometimes you gotta roll with the punches and the show must go on, as they say. Yeah.
Well, that definitely is just a testament of how loyal us Greenway fans are, and
I appreciate it. Thank you.
how much we appreciate your work and everything that you and all the bands and everybody that works with Greenway or in any way is very appreciative of. So
it means everything. It really does. And I can promise you that I plan on bringing a lot more new music and a lot more amazing vinyl releases, and for as long as I can. And I know these bands, you know, I want to support their art so they can keep on creating it, and all they have to worry about is creating art, and I'll do the rest. That's like kind of that's the dream for me, and what I hope to give artists that I work with, who I can have the ability to believe in, who allow me to believe and foster their art and contribute to it. So I'm proud of all that. I thank you guys for everything. I thank all the fans of the label. It was something like that showed. It was like more like you see it all the time. Like I appreciate it's like it's a super supportive, even in terms of just like when you on Instagram, on social media, it's like you put stuff out there. But that was like it was like a big hug, sort of, in a way, when it really was a pretty shitty time for everybody, you know, in our little world, basically what we felt wasn't so little at that, you know, with all that support, basically, which was a beautiful thing.
Definitely. Well, we cannot wait to see what the future holds for Greenway Records, and just we're excited to see it. And I think that's a good note to leave off on. Harry, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. It was a great time.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Wesley. I appreciate you guys. Right. Yeah. Thank you for talking. I definitely like to talk, as some people say. So
do we. That's why we do this. That's why we do this podcast. But it was a pleasure. I will be seeing you at Levitation, so
can't wait.
We'll definitely meet up there. And thanks guys so much for listening. Follow Greenway Records on Instagram. Go check them out. Buy records from them. Support their bands. Follow us on Overcast at overcast.podcast on Instagram. Shout out to Justin again for mixing the audio for this podcast. And thank you guys so much.
Thank
See
you guys. Stay
next
safe,
time.
Right?
See ya.
Yeah. Be well.